Today we purge pesky power lines promptly in post-production. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to show you guys. This won't even take that long. What we're going to do, we've got our background layer here, and I'm going to create a new layer on top of that. Now there are a couple of tools that are in the arsenal of getting rid of or removing this sort of thing. You have things like your patch tool, your clone stamp tool, your healing brush tool, and, well, your brush tool. I'm going to show you the positives and negatives of each. So let's start off with our clone stamp tool. S for the clone stamp tool. And what I can do, let's just zoom out just a little bit more, is I can sample an area that's right over here, and then I can start painting right over top of my power lines. So we're sampling and then painting. S for the clone stamp tool, and then hold down Alt or Option to sample and then paint those away. Alright, now make sure if you are on a new layer to have current and below checked right here where it's actually going to be sampled. If you have it sampled on current layer, it's not going to do anything because there's nothing on this current layer when you start. Okay, so here we are using our clone stamp tool, and this is not a bad technique. But the problem that I always run in with the clone stamp tool is, what if the area I'm trying to, clone stamp or whatever, like here to over there, what if that's, it doesn't look like, let's just change our blending mode back to normal, by the way. It doesn't look like, where I'm actually trying to paint. Like here, maybe it might not look like right over there. It just can be a little bit tricky, especially when we deal with like large color gradients. You tend to get things like this bright patch here, and it's just going to be really hard to get that right color in there. And you wind up getting something that looks a little bit splotchy and just, quite frankly, kind of bad most of the time. Okay, so let's just make that layer invisible. Let's try a new layer. I'm going to use a healing brush tool. Again, let's sample current and below. And I'm going to sample up here, and we're going to paint right over our little power line. There we go. And that seems to be doing a little bit better, except for when we start to run into the edge of where this mountain is. Like up here, it's probably going to do all right because there's no real edges. Like it's nice here in the cornfields because there aren't any hard edges. But when you have an edge, like the mountains meets the sky, you get something like that. And the reason is because this tool basically uses the texture of wherever you sample and the color of where you paint and tries to blend them in. Not a bad thing, especially when you have an area that doesn't have a sharp edge, but if you do, you're going to wind up with something that looks like this. Unless you sample another area that has that hard edge and then you paint that in just like that, and you can see how it brings the cornfields from here over to here, just like that. So sample this area, Alt or Option, bring your cursor right back over here, and start painting it in, and then you can paint in your cornfields, which works down there, but still, again, not exactly what we want. So these tools are really great for a lot of reasons, but sometimes this sort of thing is just not exactly what we want. So we're going to suggest another tool, and it's just going to be the brush tool. And if you guys have been watching Phlearn, you know that I'm a huge believer in the brush tool. It's just a really great tool, and I think it gets underutilized. I would almost suggest get better at the brush tool before you worry about clone stamp and healing brush tools and things like that. If you're really good at the brush tool, there's almost nothing you cannot do in Photoshop. So, for instance, with the brush tool alone, all I have to do is sample this color that's like right here. So, B for the brush tool, hold down Alt or Option, and I'm going to sample this color, and then we're just going to paint. And I've got a flow of about 20% here, which means it's going to allow me to do a build-up here. I can paint over and over and over again, and the more I paint over this area, the more it's going to allow that color to kind of come through. So I'm just doing this over and over again. Sample here, paint a little bit. Sample here, paint a little bit. There we go. If you want a larger brush for some larger blending, just sample, choose your brush a little bit larger, and you're good to go. Now here in the background, we can just basically do the same. Sample this color and paint it in. So this is going to work really well when you guys are doing like an out of focus area like this. Sample the surrounding colors and then just paint them in with a large soft brush. Now I am using a tablet here. This is a Wacom Intuos 4 small tablet, which I love more than anything else in the world. And if I had to stop photoshopping, if I had to get rid of my tablet tomorrow, I think I would quit Photoshop too, because I just wouldn't do it anymore. It's silly to use Photoshop without a tablet, in my opinion. And I don't get paid to say that. We have no endorsements by Wacom at all, but I really do like this thing a lot. There we go. So just kind of like painting in here with the brush tool. Now you might run across areas like this where it's like, a soft brush might not work. Just choose your brush a little bit smaller. Now you can hold a Control and Alt, click to your left and right, and that's going to make your brush larger or smaller. Up and down is going to make your brush harder and softer. If you guys are on a PC, it's going to be Control, Alt, and right click, and then you can drag there as well. So I'm going to make a smaller brush now, and we're going to sample this color from here, and a smaller brush is basically going to give us the feel of a harder edge. There we go. So we can actually still continue to have that hard edge right inside of our, with the same brush, just chosen to be a little bit smaller. And then we can make up for things like, a little bit of a blurry edge if you were using a large brush. So I would recommend, start off with a little bit larger of a brush, get your shading in exactly how you want it, and then you can kind of come in afterwards and kind of blend everything in. So that's the before and the after with those power lines. So you can see it really wasn't that hard, and we use the brush tool. You can even zoom in. If you want little pieces of plant, just make a small brush, sample these colors, and just like paint little plants in. Don't be afraid of the brush tool, guys. It's extremely, extremely important. And it makes you think more and more creative. It's just, well, golly, it's just the best thing ever. I'm in love with it, and I think that everyone should be. There we go. So we're just painting that in. So there's the brush tool. Now, what you could do if you're not completely comfortable with the brush tool alone. So here's it with the clone stamp tool. Okay? Sorry, there we go. There's the clone stamp tool. We see a couple areas like it's lighter here, darker there. It's just hard to do that. Okay? Here's our healing brush tool, not the best tool. Here's just the brush tool. But if you don't feel comfortable with just the brush tool, start off with a clone stamp tool, just like we did here, and then grab a brush tool with a nice soft edge, and then just kind of fade it in. And again, I would recommend here using flow over opacity because it'll help you to build up your effect over and over and over again. So we'll use a smaller brush, kind of paint in some of that stuff there as well. So whether you want to use just the brush tool or the clone stamp tool or whatever tool you decide, these are the things that have worked for me in the past. So oftentimes, especially when something's out of focus like this, I will skip all the other tools and just go right to the brush tool because I know you can do just as good, if not a better job, and it's probably going to take less time using the same tool. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So getting rid of those things in the background. There are many different ways to do it. We did clone stamp, healing brush, and the brush tool, and the positives and negatives of each of those things. And there we go, guys. You are equipped to get rid of anything you want in the background. Just remember, if you're using the brush tool, just sample the color that's right around the area you want to get rid of, and then paint right over it, and you're good to go. You'll make you feel like an old school master in no time. We got Leonardo DiCaprio's and Da Vinci's developing at the same time here on Phlearn.com. Thanks so much, guys, watching Phlearn. I hope this helped out, and I will Phlearn you later.